In a semi-detached house in Wolverhampton, the kettle gives a dry little rattle before it settles. Margaret stands at the sink in her slippers and wipes the steam from the window with the side of her hand. On the table lies a brown envelope, opened neatly, then folded twice, then folded again. She runs one thumb along the crease as if a firmer line might soften the words inside. Outside, a bin lorry grinds past, and the teaspoons in the mug tremble against the china. How many people have looked at one letter or one refused claim and quietly decided that there is no help for them at all? If that question has ever sat in your own kitchen and never quite made it into words, stay close and walk with me for a little while. Because today is about a payment many older people miss, not because they are foolish, but because it is hidden behind the wrong assumptions. If you are not on pension credit, you may still be owed attendance allowance, or in Scotland, the same kind of support under a different name. And the theme that will carry us through this whole piece is simple. One closed door is not the whole house. Attendance allowance is money for older people who need help with personal care or supervision because of illness, frailty, disability, memory loss, or a condition that makes daily life less safe. It is not means tested, which simply means your income and savings do not decide it. It is not the same thing as pension credit, and being turned down for pension credit does not shut this door. At the time of speaking, it can pay £76 and 70 pence a week at the lower rate, or £114 and 60 pence a week at the higher rate. And that money can be spent in the way your life truly needs, not in the way a stranger imagines it should. Dorothy is 74 and lives alone in Blackpool in the same flat above the parade where she and her husband moved in after he retired from the trams. By the microwave sits a jar of tea bags, a packet of rich tea biscuits, and a wall calendar still turned to last month because climbing on the chair hurts her hips. Her hands are strong enough to twist open the milk, but not always steady enough to lower herself into the bath without a sharp little breath she does not want anyone to hear. She has arthritis in both knees, swollen fingers, and mornings when her chest feels tight enough to make dressing seem like work fit for another person. But Dorothy is proud, and pride has a way of making a woman say, "I manage," when what she really means is, "I take much longer, and I am frightened of falling." She had looked into pension credit once and found her small widow's pension and state pension took her just past the line, so she folded the papers away and told herself that was that. Months passed, and she began washing in stages at the sink because getting in and out of the bath felt like stepping on wet glass. At night she left the landing light on, not for comfort exactly, but because the dark and the stairs together had begun to feel like a challenge thrown by the house itself. Her daughter noticed the stack of unworn blouses on the spare bed, and the kettle filled only halfway because lifting it had become awkward. The turning point came not in drama, but in relief when Dorothy finally said, in a small, tired voice, "I am not managing as well as I pretend." When I hear a story like Dorothy's, I come back to the same quiet truth. Attendance allowance is not for people who have no income, and it is not only for people who have a carer standing beside them all day. It is for need, not performance, and not for the brave face shown to the postman or the neighbor over the fence. Many older people miss it because they think they must already be getting pension credit, or because they think struggle only counts when someone else witnesses it. One closed door is not the whole house, and Dorothy's life did not become easier when her pride spoke for her. I make work like this for people who have carried jobs, marriages, children, parents, funerals, bills, and all the ordinary weight of life without asking for applause. If that sounds like your kind of company, keep a place here and come along when these matters are set out slowly and properly. There is no race in this corner, and no pleasure taken in making plain things sound complicated. Only careful words, honest detail, and the hope that what belongs to you does not go unclaimed simply because nobody explained it well. That matters more than many people realize, especially later in life, when one missed payment can change the feel of a whole month. George is 68 and lives in a red brick terrace in Wigan with a suitcase still half packed by the bedroom door from a holiday that never happened. He had booked a week in Scarborough with his sister, then canceled after a spell of heart trouble left him breathless on the stairs and exhausted by the small business of washing and shaving. The fruit bowl sits full because he no longer walks to the shops every day, and the hallway smells faintly of liniment and the damp wool of coats not yet put away. George owns his home outright, has a little in savings from years on the buses, and assumed that meant every kind of help would pass him by. In his mind, benefits were for people with nothing, and because he was not on pension credit, he never looked again. What changed things was the night he blacked out for a second in the bathroom and woke on the floor with the cold from the tiles creeping through his pajama leg. Nothing broke, and he told nobody for 2 days, which is often how these things happen. Then his sister came round with mince pies, saw the bruise, and sat at the kitchen table until he told the truth about the washing, the dressing, the dizziness, and the fear of being alone at night. He did not need someone actually helping him every hour for his need to count, and that was the part he had never understood. The form was not about whether he had put on a brave coat and gone to the chemist. It was about what life was asking of him behind the front door. So I say this carefully because it matters. The test is not whether you have a diagnosis with an impressive name, and it is not whether you grit your teeth and get through the day. The question is whether your condition means you need help with personal care or supervision to keep you safe during the day, at night, or both. That might mean washing, dressing, eating, taking tablets, getting to the toilet, staying steady, or being watched over because confusion, falls, breathlessness, or memory lapses make life risky. And it does not cover mobility on its own, which is another reason some people miss it, because they look only at the walking and not at the care. Mary is 79 and lives in Dundee in a small ground floor flat where seed packets are clipped to the side of the fridge with a souvenir magnet from St. Andrews. The radio is always on low in the afternoon, more for company than for the news, and the same cardigan hangs on the chair back because she feels the cold now in a different way. Her sight has worsened, and her memory slips at odd moments, not enough to make a scene, but enough to leave a pan on, miss tablets, or answer the door late because she forgot why she stood up. She tells her son she is fine, and in one sense she is, because the beds are made, the curtains are drawn back, and there is soup in the cupboard. But safety is not the same thing as tidiness, and independence is not the same thing as being unwatched. In Scotland, the help has a different name, pension age disability payment, but the hidden sorrow around it can sound very much the same. Mary did not think supervision counted because no one was washing her or fastening her buttons. Then one evening her son found the grill on, the bread blackened to a hard curl, and Mary sitting calmly with her knitting, not distressed, simply unaware. That was the emotional turn, the moment he saw that care needs can be quiet and still very real. When the claim was made, the money did not change who Mary was, but it helped pay for the support that kept her safe without stripping away the shape of her own home. Each time I return from one of these stories, I find the same thread in my hand. Older people often think help belongs only to the desperate, the destitute, or the visibly unwell. Yet the law often looks in a different direction. It asks what help you need, not how noble you have been in coping without it, and not how tidy your sitting room appears on a Wednesday afternoon. One closed door is not the whole house, and Mary's dignity was not diminished by opening another way in. There is also the question of time, and this is where people often drift into delay. In most cases, you need to have had those care or supervision needs for at least 6 months before attendance allowance can be paid, unless special rules apply near the end of life. You can apply online in many cases, or by post, and many people still prefer the paper form spread across the table with a pen and a cup of tea. If you ring for the form and send it back within 6 weeks, the claim can usually start from the date of that phone call, which can matter. And if a first decision comes back wrong, or your needs have grown since an older refusal, that is not the end of the road either. Aisha is 73 and lives in Leicester with her husband Ravi, who is 78. In a narrow street where the curtains glow gold by 5:30 in winter, there is always a tea towel over her shoulder, and the smell of cumin and onions seems to live softly in the kitchen walls. Ravi was once exact in everything, the sort of man who folded bank statements into neat thirds and kept screws in labeled jam jars in the shed. Then dementia entered the house not with a bang, but with repetition, wandering, missed tablets, and evenings when he became restless after dark and tried to leave in his slippers. They were not on pension credit because Ravi had a decent work pension, and so Aisha assumed no further help would ever apply. For months she told herself that what they needed was simply patience, and there is truth in that, but patience is not the same thing as support. She slept lightly because Ravi might rise at night, and she timed her showers for the 10 minutes when he seemed most settled. The turning point came when she found the front door open at dawn and Ravi standing in the cold with no coat, looking for a factory that had closed 20 years earlier. After that, a friend from the mosque mentioned attendance allowance, and Aisha almost laughed with disbelief because she thought it would be ruled out by their savings and pension income. Instead, the award recognized Ravi's need for supervision, and the money helped buy breathing space, a sitter for an afternoon, taxis to appointments, and one less layer of fear. I wish more people knew how often this happens. A person hears the word allowance and assumes it must be narrow, fussy, and built only for one sort of hardship. But in truth, it can sit quietly beside conditions like dementia, heart failure, arthritis, poor sight, hearing loss, lung disease, Parkinson's, or frailty that turns a simple morning into a careful operation. You do not need a named carer in the house for your need to count, and because the payment is not taxed and not reduced by ordinary savings or pension income, it can reach households who had stopped expecting help of any kind. From time to time, it is worth saying plainly what this place is trying to be. It is for the person who folds the letter back into the envelope and tells no one they are worried. If you recognize that silence, remain here for these slow walks through the things that matter. I want this to feel like a small lamp on the table, not a shout from the hallway. A place where difficult money questions can be faced without shame and answered without fuss. There is another reason this matters, and it reaches beyond the weekly amount itself. Getting attendance allowance can sometimes increase other help, including pension credit, housing benefit, or council tax reduction. So a successful claim can do more than place extra money in the bank. It can change the rest of the calculation around your household and open doors that look closed the first time you checked. That is especially important for older renters and for people whose council tax bill has become one more heavy thing on the mat. Council tax reduction, sometimes called council tax support, is run by your local council, and the rules can vary depending on where you live. What matters here is the broad truth. You do not have to be on pension credit to ask for it, and some pension-age households can still qualify because of low income, disability-related support, or the shape of the household. The same goes for housing benefit for many people over state pension age who rent and meet the rules, even though the system is more tangled than it once was. So, when attendance allowance is awarded, it is wise to look again at the whole picture, not just the one payment. This is where forms matter, and it is also where people lose ground by being too brave on paper. If the question asks what happens when you wash, do not write that you manage if what you mean is that you grip the sink, pause twice, and fear slipping in the bath. If the question asks about nighttime, do not leave it blank because you are embarrassed to say how often you wake, stumble, feel confused, or need watching. The form is not asking for your best day, and it is not marking you on effort. It is trying, however imperfectly, to understand the real shape of life in the hours when no one is clapping for your determination. I have often thought that later, life is full of small acts of concealment. A woman pushes through the pain before visitors arrive. A man reheats the same cup of tea 3 times and tells himself tiredness is normal. A couple say they are coping because they do not want their children to think they are declining. Yet money protection in older age often begins the moment somebody stops editing the truth into a more respectable version. One closed door is not the whole house, but you do have to admit that the first key did not fit. If one person comes to mind now, send this on to them quietly. A parent who says they are fine when they are plainly worn out. A neighbor who never misses bin day but has started missing meals. A friend from work, a brother, a sister, the woman 2 doors down, who still waves cheerfully from the gate while living much harder than she says. Sometimes help moves through the world, not in campaigns or speeches, but in one small kindness passed from one pair of hands to another. Near the end of all this, I think of the sort of British house where the front door sticks in wet weather. From the street, it can seem shut fast. You put your shoulder to it once, feel it hold, and might easily think that is the whole story. But often there is a side gate, a narrow path, the bins, a back step, and then the kitchen, lit softly with the kettle beginning to hum. That is what this hidden support can be like for older people who thought the first refusal meant the house was closed. So if pension credit is not yours, do not let that single fact settle into your life like a final verdict. There may still be attendance allowance, or in Scotland, the matching support under another name, and there may be other help that begins only after that first piece is in place. The deepest theme here has not changed from the first quiet kitchen to this one. One closed door is not the whole house, and sometimes the difference between worry and steadiness is simply being shown where the other entrance is.